right.
Put more
So
makeup on.
here we go. All right. Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Stefanie Michi, and thank you so much for joining me for the Indie Author Hour with today's guest, S.G. Minae. Hi, Stan. Hi.
Hi, Steph.
How are
Thank
you?
you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining me. How's it going today?
Good.
Good, good. And
Excited to be here.
Suzanne's in California, and is it sunny today? Do we have another beautiful day?
It is.
Do we
It's a
have
nice
another beautiful day? All right.
Mhm.
So we just want to make sure that this is streaming, right? Did you want to check your phone? You had said before we started?
Yeah, it just goes to your page. It doesn't go to the link.
The link should set us up on my page. So let's see. Let me take a look. Can you see if, can you tell?
Okay, so yeah, there is a link there. It's just not direct. So they go to your page and then they find
it's through Facebook Live. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I see it.
we have Josephine. Hi, Josephine. Thank you so much
Hi.
for joining us. Josephine is our first viewer. And
Yay.
okay, so Suzanne, tell me, have you always lived in California? Where did life begin for you?
I was a Valley girl, born and raised.
Oh, really? Just like go ahead.
I grew up in Woodland Hills. I went to school in Northridge. I've lived in many, many places in the Valley, and now I've moved just one town over to Simi Valley. So I'm still nearby.
Forever. And did you always want to be a writer? Was that something that you knew you were going to do? Like what about that?
I've always loved writing. I never had time to take the creative writing classes that I really wanted to in college. I'm an accountant. So I feel like I'm a really good writer that I use mostly for technical writing, emails and laying out documents and
yeah, explain technical writing for those that don't know technical writing. It's
I just mean in the business world as opposed to creative writing that's not the official term for technical writing. I think I would probably think of writing, like manuals for products and stuff. That's not
directions on how to set things up and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So when did you decide you wanted to write stories? Like when did that come about?
Well, I've like I said, I've always wanted to. I've always kept a folder on my computer of story ideas. Like someday I am going to write this book. And the way I actually started writing was actually pretty funny.
Oh, good.
I read Twilight and I really enjoyed it, but I wanted a little more intimacy. I'm an adult, right?
Right.
And so then about that time, everybody was saying, oh, coming up is this new book called 50 Shades of Grey. It's going to be Twilight for grown-ups. And I was really excited about that. So I go and I buy that and I read it. And despite the writing, it was entertaining, but there was nothing paranormal about it. And I've always loved everything paranormal. But the one genre I don't generally gravitate towards is horror because to me, it's too realistic, especially like psychological thrillers because it's too real. But put that in a paranormal environment and you can kind of believe it without believing it.
Right. Well, they say if you can't find the book that you want to read on the shelf, write it. Right?
Exactly.
Have you heard that?
So I dreamt about the characters and they became so vivid and they wouldn't go away and they wanted their story to be told. So my first book, Taryn, The Awakening, is basically Twilight with aliens instead of vampires and werewolves.
That is so interesting.
But it's a lot deeper. It is sexier, but it's also more angsty. Because she's a human woman who's a young actress who falls in love with the gorgeous actor and then finds out that she's empathic with him and
Don't give away too
telepathic with
much.
the woman
Don't,
director.
don't give away too much now. Don't.
No, that's just the premise. That's just the first chapter.
Do you have the cover? Do you have the book?
I do. This was my very first book. It took me 6 months to write it and 8 years to polish it and learn how to be a better writer and get it published.
I love the colors. So where
you know
did
what?
you?
And this actually is not. This is my original cover, but it wasn't really sci-fi romancy enough. So I did. I'll pull it up a little bit later. But the cover that I have on the ebook is actually a lot more sexy.
Okay. So yeah, I look forward to seeing that. So now the name Taryn, how do you come up with your names? I never heard that name before. So that name is a little different to me, a little odd. How did you come up with that name?
I was trying to think of names that would have some meaning. And Taryn, spelled differently, basically like Terran, is 1 R or 2 R's, actually means the earth or the ground. So she's the human.
I love that. That's really interesting.
And then the other 2 are the aliens, which you know from the beginning.
Right. So 6 months.
She doesn't know.
6 months to write you that. 6 months it took you to write the story?
I was working full-time and raising my youngest daughter. My older 2 were out of the house already. And I would get up at 6 a.m. and write for an hour before going off to work, coming home, taking care of the family. And then 10 p.m. to 1 or 2 a.m. I would write. And then I would sleep for a few hours and get up and start all over the next day.
See, it can be done. It can be done.
It was a passion of mine. It wouldn't go away.
That's what we have to do. We have to follow our passion. And you did mention that you did mention the word dream, that you dreamt about it. So when you say you dreamt about it, was it while you were asleep? Was it like an actual dream you were having while you were asleep? Or was it like a daydream, you would think about it and while you were awake? Tell me about that.
I'm not sure which way it started because when I choose to be, I can be a lucid dreamer.
Oh, wow.
So these characters came to me and then I would tweak them around until I could visualize an entire scene. And when I could describe the entire scene, I would then go to the computer and write it.
Right. Wow. So then how long between books? When did you release your second book?
Okay, I released this one in February of last year. And then I joined a group that talked about sorry, I've got a hair in my eye. I joined a group that talked about how important it is to release more quickly. And this book is the next 2 books. It's going to be a trilogy. And this book is 115,000 words. And the next 2 books will very likely be substantially longer because it's going to be very epic. This one takes place on Earth. The next one will start on Earth and go to their planet. The one after that, they'll come back and there will be a big war, invasion. And those, I know they're not going to come quickly for writing. Right. So I thought about what could I write that would be a lot of fun for me to write and for readers to read that I could do more quickly and make shorter. So I came up with the idea of Fantasy Planet, and I published the first one in January of this year, and the second one will be coming out in a couple of months.
Oh, wow.
And we'll see about after that. I want to get back to my original trilogy, but I'll probably write 1 or 2 more in the Fantasy Planet series.
Very exciting. So now let me ask you this. Did you find... Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I feel really guilty because I've had so much time this last year. I should have had the first 6 done by now.
Well, that's, you know what, you must have read my mind, because that was exactly what I was going to ask you. Did you find it easier or harder to write while everything that was going on, with coronavirus? And are you guys on lock? I mean, because you're in California,
Mhm.
so I'm not exactly sure what your restrictions are. I think you're really restricted. Are you on a lockdown or no?
I never quite know, but my husband has heart disease, and so we try and be really, really careful.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman that I was doing accounting for, she has several family businesses, but she is a caregiver for a man with advanced MS. And so she has put everything on hold because she can't risk him getting sick, or she can't risk herself getting sick and giving it to him. So I'm basically home on unemployment right now. So
Okay.
so
So,
I have, you know what, I wasn't sure I'd ever even write a second book. So given that, I'm extremely proud of the fact that I'm getting ready to publish my third one.
wow.
So it's not
Yeah.
as fast as a lot of people. Some people are able to publish a book a month, and maybe someday I'll get there, probably not. But
Everyone's
it's a lot more
different.
than I ever thought I would do.
Everyone is different. So when you were a kid, were you a reader? Would you call yourself a reader?
I loved reading, loved it. It was my escape. My parents divorced when I was 8. Um, I've always loved science fiction-y, paranormal
Mm,
stuff, but I was a really slow reader. So I didn't read nearly as much as I would have liked as far as number of books, but I always had a book to my face. And um, then in college, it was either high school or college, my dad finally paid for me to get a speed reading course because I was reading so slowly that my concentration, my I wasn't absorbing it. By the time I read the next part, I had forgotten because it was taking me so long. My brain was getting bored. So I took a
right,
speed
right.
reading class, and I'm far from a speed reader, but I read much faster than I used to, and my comprehension is so much better, and that helped a lot.
And then I know a lot of people sometimes when they say they read chapter one, and then if they do read slow, by the time they get to chapter two, sometimes they don't remember what happened in chapter one, just like you said, because it was a little bit of a slow process. So they go back and they reread chapter one so that way they know what's going on in chapter two. But it does make reading a book take a long time in that
Mhm.
respect, right? So that way you can remember
Yeah.
what happened and the characters and stuff like that. But how about when you were much younger, like in elementary school? Were you an avid reader at that point or
Oh
no?
yeah.
When did books,
Um,
as soon as you
when
started
I was,
to spell or read?
I vividly remember, I think I was 5th grade. And whenever we would come back from lunch, the teacher would read a chapter from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And that was ridiculous. I was not going to wait for the rest of the story. So we got the book and I finished it. And then, of course, was bored every day after that because I had
Wow.
already
And
read it.
do you
But
remember, do you remember Scholastic? Did you have Scholastic in California? You get the order form and you get to order books and stuff like that. Was that something you
I
guys
don't
had, or was
know
it
if we
called
had it
something
when
different?
I don't know if we had it when I was little. I'm pretty ancient.
Oh,
um,
I'm
but
probably
I know
older
that
than
I
you.
went through that a lot with my kids, especially my older kids who are now in their early 30s.
Do they
And
like to read?
so,
Do they
mhm.
like to read? Are they readers? Have they read your book?
Okay, that's tough. My oldest daughter is not much of a reader.
Okay.
The one series that got her to start reading was Harry Potter.
I think Harry Potter started off a lot of readers when it
Yeah.
came out. Yeah.
And my son, okay, so my first two, who are now 33 and 31, they're 16 and a half months apart. And my son was always a reader. I mean, he read like everything Stephen King did, and he did all kinds of stuff. And so the three of us would fight over the Harry Potter books. So I would have to buy multiples as they came out.
Oh,
Because we
wow,
would
look
fight
at
over who would
that.
get to read them. Because I was enjoying them too. And then my youngest one just turned 17. So I have a big gap. She's graduating from high school. And
Oh,
she's a
wow.
huge reader, but she's not at all into romance. She wants fantasy, historical fiction.
Right, right.
You know, she's
Everybody has their own taste. Yeah.
yeah. So my son keeps saying he's going to read it, and I don't really want him to, but I do, but I don't. My sister finally read the first Fantasy Planet book, and she enjoyed it. She's not a reader, so the fact that she read it was a big deal.
That is a big deal. You might
But
have
she's
started
the
her
only one
off.
in my family to read it. So.
Yeah, you might have started her off now into getting into reading books. That's a big compliment to you, though, right? If she read your book and she's not a reader, I think that's a really big compliment. So your first book, you said it took you just months to write, but it took you years to self-publish, right? To polish and to get it ready to be
Yeah,
self.
there were a couple really important reasons why it took so long. Actually several. The first is that it really sucked.
Why do all writers think their stories suck?
It was closer to 50 Shades than to Twilight.
Okay.
And in some ways maybe beyond. And so I was going to have a pen name and everything, because there was no way I was, you know, going to publish that smut under my name. But I decided I just wasn't comfortable with that. And then I worked with some people who taught me a lot about writing itself and stories and structure and things like that. And I studied and I practiced and I rewrote 100 times.
Wow.
And then I put it away for about 5 years because we bought a coffee house around that time.
Oh, wow.
And I had pictures of sitting in the corner in my, you know, my favorite, you know, like we didn't have recliners, but we had like padded armchairs and stuff. It was a really comfy, amazing coffee house. I was just going to sit there and work, and the baristas would do all the work. But baristas
sounds fabulous.
Baristas are really expensive.
Oh, oh, so you did the work yourself.
I opened every day, 7 days a week. We opened at 6 a.m. So I was there at 5:30 every morning. My husband would close every day. And then we'd just have baristas come in during the busy times.
Right, right. So no writing took place during then, right? Because you were
no.
super busy.
But the men in the basement kept working. And during
I'm
that
sure.
time, I was able to figure out what it was I wanted from the book. The woman the people I worked with basically wanted me to completely change the book. And I decided their idea was a great idea, but it wasn't my story. So I decided instead to revisit my story, but make it better. And so I did a complete rewrite, both in tone and story structure, and had editors and critiquers and stuff.
So let me ask you this. So when you finished the first draft, you know, that you weren't ready to, you know, move on with, like a feeling, like when you wrote that first draft, you had your beginning, you had your middle, and you had your end. So when you got to the end of the story, did you say to yourself, did you like look at your work and say, wow, I just wrote a complete story? Do you remember from back then or no?
I did. It was an awesome feeling. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. And because a lot of people start books, but they don't finish them. So it wasn't published. It wasn't good enough to be published, but it was a complete novel.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And yeah, it felt really good.
Yeah, it should. I mean, so many people, that's the day that they wait for, to be able to complete something, to complete, you know, just to have a first draft, just to have that beginning, that middle, and that end. It's difficult. It's not easy. But if everybody hangs in there, right, it can be done, right? So now let me ask you this. Were you itching over those years to like get that story complete? Or I know you said the wheels were still turning, but you seem to be like really patient. Or were you not? You know what I mean? Because that's a long time. And I know you had the coffee shop. So that takes up a lot of your time and a lot of your energy. And you wanted your book to be perfect. But were you like itching to get it out there, to get it in
Oh,
the
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I really give you credit because that's a long time.
Yeah, it was hard. And then when it's so funny because every time you finish a new draft, you're like, this is so awesome. And you're like, okay, I'm ready to publish it. And then somebody reads it and tears it to shreds. And you're like, oh.
When you say somebody reads it, what do you mean? The person like a beta reader, or like who do you mean exactly?
Yeah, I had a couple of wonderful beta readers, and I also hired somebody to do a manuscript critique, and they had some very harsh comments about the degree of detail. So I've always been one of those people who hate being bogged down by, like in Tolkien, a 3-page paragraph describing, like what color the flower was or something. I've never been that kind of a reader, and I didn't want to write that.
Right.
I did acknowledge that maybe I was at the other extreme. I felt like I described it enough, but I decided to go back through it and make it a little bit more visual.
Okay.
But to the degree that I felt comfortable, that I would want to read it.
Right.
So if I sit down and I read through it and I get bogged down, it's getting chopped.
So where did you find your critique person? Was this someone that you knew? Because it's kind of hard to hand someone over your work if they don't have the same vision maybe as you, or they don't read the story or process it the same way that you are. Everybody has a reader. Some readers like just, a lot of description. Some like to visualize things themselves. So it's kind of hard when you have somebody critiquing your work. You don't know if they're really leading you in the right direction, right? Because they wanted more description and you don't want to, you didn't really want to be as descriptive as they wanted you to be. So that's kind of hard to like try to.
It's incredibly hard, which is why I highly recommend doing what I did, which was I hired her to do a manuscript critique, which was a fraction of the money of a full-on edit. So I was able to see if we were a good fit. And she's a fabulous editor. She is. I have nothing negative to say to her other than her critiques didn't work for me. They discouraged me rather than encouraged me. And so I was ready to just put it aside and not even publish it ever. And it turned out that one of my beta readers who had absolutely loved the book turned out to be a professional editor who had many years of experience in the traditional publishing field in Europe, in the UK. And so she became my editor. And the thing that I loved about her approach for me was she said, oh my God, I absolutely love this. Now let's make it even better. Instead of saying that sucks, it needs, just stop it, do it completely different. She said, it's amazing, but you need, let's improve it. Let's
and
use these tools.
But that's what you want to hear. You want the encouragement. I mean, the other editor though didn't say, or the one that was critiquing the manuscript, they didn't actually say this sucks, did they? They didn't really use those words.
She said, I can't picture it, so I can't enjoy this. And she said it's better to have too much description and let readers skip it, which is a philosophy. It is a legitimate approach to writing, but it was not my approach.
Right. I can totally understand that. So that was one of the harder roads, I guess, that you had to travel as far as going indie, right? Being an independent author.
Yeah, finding that right editor that you have the fit with is so important.
Now, did you send it out to a few different editors and ask them to return samples, or did you just, work? Well, you said she was really just critiquing it, but as far as the editing went, and then you got lucky and you found out one of your beta readers happened to be an editor too. So it's kind of hard, or it's very hard sometimes to find that fit, right? Someone that you can, and someone that you could communicate with and can picture the story, even if it's not by the writer's, the way the writer is writing it. If the editor can just picture in their mind the story you're trying to tell, I think that really, really helps. And that's really hard to find. So that was a struggle, right, for you in the beginning. And how
and it almost, and I did have another beta reader who is, and some of these people are incredibly prolific on Facebook, and they read and review lots and lots of books and do lots of beta reading. And just like not everyone is going to be your reader, not everyone is going to be your beta reader or your editor. Not everyone will enjoy your style.
Right.
And, but it was very disheartening. And at that point, I was pretty much ready to just, throw my hands up. And Nicole Newman has just been amazing. She basically took me under her wing. And, she said that my writing is very clean. As far as actual like line editing type stuff, that she didn't need a lot. She gave me a little bit of developmental edits. It's like, I think you should move this over here, kind of thing, just in a couple of spots. And, went through and told me where things were not clear enough, where I had too much exposition, things like that. And I did pay quite a bit of money for that, but it was worth it.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it was worth every penny, because news, when you get that kind of feedback from someone, the negative feedback, that really can and will discourage most new writers, because writers are already unsure in the beginning when they're writing. And I think that just continues on with a writer, because you never know if what you're writing is going to, really grab the reader. And they say, not every book is for every reader, and it's not, because there's so many different genres and there's just so many different styles of writing. But when you're first starting out, and to get that negative feedback right away, I mean, that's, that can be really discouraging. But thank goodness you found, her name is Nicole, you said?
Yes.
Thank goodness you found Nicole, because that really put a spin, like a positive spin on it.
Yes.
Made you say to yourself, right, I can do this. I can, finish this story, fix it up, and self-publish it. So how long into meeting her or realizing that she was an editor that you self-published? Like, what was the time frame of that? Like, how long did it take you to tweak and work? Do you remember?
Well, it was actually pretty funny, because I was planning on maybe about 6 months. And she's like, "You're going to be ready in 2. This is ready to go." And I'm like, "No, it's not." And,
wow. So she was definitely a positive influence for you.
And I really need to reiterate that the people that I've worked with that I chose not to continue working with, I value their input so much, because, maybe it was the kick in the pants that I needed to get me to write more detail. I just wish maybe they had worded it a little bit differently. It's not what they said, but maybe how they said it.
Maybe how they said it.
I don't think that they were wrong, I mean,
Right,
maybe a little more
right.
extreme than I would want to go, but, you know, and that's why I hate editing people's work. You know, I don't mind like at the end, like helping to clean stuff up, but being a beta reader, I feel like if I'm going to be helpful, I want to point things out, but I don't know if I'm being too cruel.
Well,
You know, I
guess-
don't want to be the one to turn somebody else off of writing, yet at the
Right.
same time I want to be helpful and tell them what will help their story be better.
But the
So
way
it is such a hard job. It is so hard.
it is, but if you're nice about it, like you said, I mean, that's what the editor is for. The editor that I found, I love her. She's fantastic, and she told me the same thing. I don't write enough description. I mean, but she said it nicely. You know what I mean? Like, so her and I have a wonderful rapport. And when you find someone that you can communicate with and they can tell you things, that's really, you know what I mean? Like, you need that, because if you're not descriptive enough, which I could see that, because I'm the same, I was the same way, hopefully I changed. You need the feedback. That's why you have the editor. But if the editor is going to be, not so nice about it and make you feel bad about it, then that's a different story. So when you're critiquing someone's work or editing, you said you edit, you're editing, you edit too, Suzanne?
Oh, I did do one book that I
Hey,
liked
that's great.
editing.
That's great. I mean, hey,
I
everybody
loved
has to
it.
start somewhere.
I loved it. It was fun, and I felt guilty because I was getting to enjoy a good book.
But that's great if you can work and enjoy the story at the same time.
But for the most part, what I like to do is formatting. You know, I like to format for myself and for other people because the way the book looks. Okay, there's a gal on Twitter who has developed a huge following, and she is so enthusiastic about her book. So I went out and I bought her book, and she has a traditional publisher, and I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And I opened up the ebook, and it was just like lines, like the chapter was just like on the left-hand side, left justified. There, it wasn't formatted at all. It was just like a dump. And I'm like, seriously?
Wow.
So
Surprise.
I've always formatted my own books, and then I finally invested in Vellum, which is a wonderful program for formatting books. And so I format at a reasonable price for other people to kind of help pay me back for the cost of the Vellum.
All right, that makes sense. Well, full disclosure, can I say that you formatted my book?
I wasn't sure if you wanted me to say.
Oh yeah. Only because I want to let people know you did a great job. I understand you're a writer, and formatting is not something that you want to do, I guess, all the time, because you are a writer first. But I do want to say you did a great job, and thank you. Thank you. At least I get to thank you now face to face, because we did everything, through the cell phone, through the messages, stuff like that. And I thought you were fabulous to work with, and you also proofread for me. So I don't know if I could say that, but you did. But of course, it was a service, and I paid for it. I'm saying it like, oh, you did it for me, but I don't want anybody.
Well, you did, and I appreciate that, and that's something that I'm trying to do also, is that when people do stuff for me that they would charge other people for, I want to pay for it, because that is their livelihood, and they are doing service. There have been times, both in my writing career and in my coffee shop, where I've completely acknowledged the value of something, but not had the money to pay for it. And so, for example, we had an open mic at our coffee house, and a friend of mine is a DJ and a performer, and he normally charges a lot of money for that. and he did it for us for free.
Oh,
And
that's so
so I
sweet.
made sure that I always let him know that I valued what he did, even if I couldn't afford to pay him. But I did give him a lot of free
Coffee.
breakfast sandwiches and
Here's a cup of coffee.
cappuccinos.
I hear he has a very bad caffeine habit now. I'm just joking. I don't even know who this person is. I'm just kidding. But free coffee is great. Oh my God, especially from a coffee shop.
Yeah.
It's the best, right? Coffee
Oh my
shop
God, I
coffee.
miss my coffee house. But I never actually drank coffee before I had a coffee house.
So would you say that, did you get like, were you drinking
I
coffee like
did.
every
I
day?
love cold drinks. So we have a line of the syrups here in the house.
Oh,
And we make
wow.
our cold brewed coffee. And so every morning I have my I take turns with different flavors. Today it's just a vanilla coffee. Sometimes I do chocolate with cream de menthe or
Wow.
something, you know. I
A
like to play
whole
around with
variety
it.
of coffees. My husband loves cold coffee too. He's a really big coffee fan. He got me actually into coffee. I was never a coffee drinker, always tea. But now I drink both. And I'm over caffeinated today because I had a lot of coffee this morning. So let me ask you this. Is there like, did you write today by any chance or no? Do you write every day?
I
Tell
feel guilty about not writing every day.
Yeah, I know.
I try to today because I had so much going on. I worked on promoting this and I caught up on some of my social media and tried to remember how to put on makeup because I don't do that very much anymore.
I know with everybody in the house all the time now, right? There's things that we forget how to do. But social media takes up a big chunk of time and it really, right? It makes the time pass and you have to be active on social media and you have to see what's going on and right, you have to be there. And especially since we were having an interview, you really want to get the word out that we're having an interview. So no writing you today, right? That's no.
I will write. I will. I'm finishing up the editing on book 2 so that I can send it out to my editor to beta read and maybe a couple other beta readers and get some input because it's already on pre-order. It needs to go out and I want it ready to go. So
that's right. And after the interview, we will include the links. I did include the links on one of the other posts, but I will include the links again so you can pre-order the book. And the name of the book again is the one we order.
The one that is already out. Okay, can I talk about Fantasy Planet a little bit? And
talk about it. Whatever you want.
So I wanted a shorter, a quicker read book. So I came up with the idea of Fantasy Planet, which if anyone's ever seen the old TV series Fantasy Island, there was a quirky host, like the handsome host and the quirky assistant tattoo. And every week they would have 2 unrelated stories. Guests who come to Fantasy Island to have their fantasies fulfilled. So in Star Trek The Next Generation, there's a resort planet called Risa, which is very uninhibited. And they touch on it, a few times. They visit there for, different characters visit there. And so I created Fantasy Planet, which each book is an episode, and 2 guests have a complete romantic story, a start to finish, HEA, happily ever after romance. And even if they know each other, the stories are on the surface unrelated, but along the way they become intertwined. And and culminate in some huge revelation, you know, excitement, fighting, you know,
Yeah,
all,
yeah,
all the
yeah.
exciting stuff that ends up basically changing everyone's lives forever.
Oh, wow.
And it's all under the guise of the hosts of the planet are these three aliens. They're called Shinkas, which are energy beings. And when three Shinkas join together, they can form a powerful triptych. And they are responsible for protecting this special planet, which over the course of the series, you'll find out more about these hosts. You'll find out more about the planets. So it's episodic as far as the guests go and their storylines, but then throughout the series, you'll be learning more about the hosts and the planet, and this is 10,000 years in the future, but eventually it will tie back to my original trilogy.
Wow, I like that. So it's all going to come around full circle, right? I like that.
And so the first book that came out, and this is just a sample one, but this is the paperback for episode 1, Beauty in the Beast.
I like that too. Yeah, I love your cover and I like the Beauty in the Beast. I think that's
and
really
so this
smart.
is a hardcover that I'm creating. If you like hardcovers, don't buy it yet because I'm working on adjusting it, and I'm also going to try and figure out a way to reduce the price because they're just so expensive. So I think I'm going to be adjusting those. So don't buy it yet if you like hardcovers. It'll be ready soon, but the paperback is available now. And Kalia is a humanoid lesbian tigress who lives in a human world where all they see, all she thinks everyone sees is her outer beast, and she wants them to see her inner beauty. And she falls in love with one of her coworkers. And so I think it's a beautiful love story.
Sounds like it.
And then the next book is going to be called Prince Charming, which is a Cinderella take. But the first few will be fairy tale retellings. They'll all have some sort of legend or fairy tale or something like that relating to it. But in this one, a woman named Sky has these dreams of dancing with the prince of their world. And they're so vivid that she wakes up feeling like it's her destiny. But her mom keeps telling her, don't get involved in politics, don't get involved with the prince, they're awful, they're horrible people. And then she's a reporter, but she just covers community fluff pieces. And she gets invited to cover the summit on Fantasy Planet, where she does in fact have that scene where she dances with the prince. And so her dreams are coming true. This is her Prince Charming. But why does she keep thinking about Justin, that guy she met on the shuttle?
So it's going to be a little bit maybe of a
to marry the prince and become the most powerful woman on the planet, or is she going to marry for love? And does she have a choice?
Oh, that's interesting.
But the act, and I believe it or not, I'm not giving it away because the twist is going to be something that you will not see coming.
Oh, I love it. That sounds really exciting. That sounds like a wonderful read. Yeah. So,
and of course, all my books are a bit spicy.
There's nothing wrong with a little bit of spice or a lot of spice, right? It depends on the reader, but that's like a really fascinating story. I like that. So that one is not released yet.
Correct?
That one is not released.
It's done. I'm just polishing it, and it'll be out by the end of May, possibly sooner.
Now, how long did it take you to write that one?
I had the entire story pretty quickly, and I should have had it done in like a month, but it's taken more like 6.
Okay, that's okay.
So
So, and then what do? Do you write notes? Like when you get ideas, do you like jot down your ideas, or do you say, I'm going to remember this, and then you forget?
I'm weird. I told you I'm an accountant.
Yes.
I use Excel. I use a combination of Excel and Scrivener. Like my writing I do in Scrivener where I can move chapters back and forth. But what I like to do is I go into Excel, and once I basically like I'll just type my storyline and I'll move stuff around like, and then till I know what my scenes are going to be. And once I have my scenes, then I have a column for this character and a column for this character and a column for this love story and a column for this love story and a column for whatever magic is going on,
Right.
and then so I can see the timeline. And then I transfer that over into Scrivener where I create a tab for each scene.
Wow.
And then I go in and I write them. Sometimes I write in order. Sometimes I'll just have a vivid vision of a scene and I'll just go in and I'll write that scene.
Right.
So, just depends. But the whole story is in my head. That doesn't mean it's not going to tweak a little bit as I actually write it out and flesh it out.
Change as you go along.
I basically have it.
So you put
like something really funny. So my first draft, I actually didn't even finish the last 3 chapters. And these are short chapters, so pretty much like each chapter is a scene. Because I had it through the exciting ending part. I just didn't have the like where they say goodbye and how they wrap things up. And I didn't know why I was having so much trouble writing those, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to just sit and stare at the paper anymore. I'm going to go ahead and start editing. And by the time I was 3 chapters in, I'm like, I know how to end it.
Wow.
And I thought of a twist that is going to blow everybody's minds. It blew mine. It blew my mind, but because he finally told me who he really is. And when I realized who he really is and what he really is, all of a sudden everything fell into place.
Right.
So maybe somewhere in the back of my head, I knew this. And because everything that I wrote fits right in with this.
Wow.
So now I'm ready to, that's where I am now. I'm going to just write those last few chapters and it'll be done.
Isn't that fascinating how, as you go along, your characters, this is what I love about writing. As the story progresses, the characters, you're really not in control of the story anymore as the writer, because the characters take on a life of their own. And they then tell the writer what's going to happen. I just think it's so magical, and it's such a wonderful feeling when you really are not, you get to a point where you're writing it, but you're really not doing the work because the characters are doing the work for you, and they're telling you, this is how it's going to be, Suzanne. And this is what the future holds, and then you write it. So if you would have forced an ending instead of going ahead and stopping and deciding to edit, your book could have had a whole different ending, and it might not have even had that twist. So if you really think about that, it's like magic, right?
Yeah, people who don't write, there's no way they can understand the power of that. It's so unique. And it really is remarkable.
It is. And when that happens, it's like, oh yes, like what a feeling. And it all comes together and your story is just so complete. And then if you think about it and say, well, if that didn't happen, this story would have took a totally different direction. It would have been a totally different story. And it's such a piece that is missing. And when it ties it all together, yeah, it's just a wonderful feeling. That is fantastic. So when do we look forward to reading this wonderful story?
Prince Charming will be out by the end of May, but I'm hoping to have it out by the end of April.
Okay.
So we'll see. I have the cover done, and
That is so
And we'll-
exciting. And I see you're very detail oriented. So you're more like a plotter, right? Since you have all your, details. I mean, granted, you change the story around and your characters are going to change the story around anyway and tell you how it's going to go. But you seem to have your scenes laid out and, the events, and you seem to have a lot laid out that you can go back and refer to. Or no, is that
Yeah, no,
your
it's,
process? Like, how do you?
I agree. I do seem to be a plotter, which is funny because when I wrote the first book, I had no outline. I didn't, I just had these scenes and I started writing them. And so I'm like, oh, I'm a pantser. I'm just going to write all this stuff. But of course, there was no cohesion to it. And then I ended up taking those scenes and plotting them out and giving them a timeline. And,
Right. Maybe
so,
because you're an
yeah, I
accountant,
guess I
right?
am a plotter.
A plotter, yeah.
But
Maybe like,
I do get frustrated. Like some people that I see are plotters to the extreme where they refuse to leave their outline. And that's when you
okay.
feel that a story is forced, I think, because like you said, the characters have decided that's not where they want to go. So
Right. And I
if
think
you
that,
force them to,
yeah, if you force them to, maybe things are not gonna, the message is not going to be relayed the way it should be relayed if you kind of like force the story. But when the magic happens and it just takes a life of its own, and then the reader, I think, gets that while they're lost in the story. The characters are so powerful in telling their own story that there's such a connection, right, between the reader and the characters and the story. It's really a wonderful, wonderful process. So we definitely look forward to seeing that book come out.
one of the turning points for me in my writing was when I learned about writing deep. My first book, my first draft was in first person. And I'm not saying that first person can't be done well, but it's very difficult to make it not seem cheesy.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But at the same time, I wanted to have that depth because it's all about people who have this metaphysical connection. They're telepathic, they're empathic. I needed them to feel, I needed the reader to feel this bond.
Right.
And so by writing deep, I put myself in the mind of the character who that scene is their point of view. And I try and express what they're going through as opposed to just a surface description from a third party looking in,
Right.
So that's my goal. And I feel like I'm getting better at it. And my editor has said that the 6 chapters of my new book that she read, I'm really excited that she said that my writing is developing to become addicting.
Ooh, well, I'll tell you, definitely the way you
I hope so.
describe your stories, but the way you describe the story and what we have to look forward to, and when you add the twist that even surprised you, I mean, come on, that sounds like a book that needs to be read, because I'm excited to find out. That's why I like to do these interviews, because you get to know the writer, and as the writer describes their story and the process and everything that went on while they were writing this story. Now this is like something that I want to learn. You know what I mean? Like I want to learn. And also when you talk about the things that, because you had to write in first, not that you had to write in first person, but that was your choice because you want to get the feelings out of this character, the way it develops. That's very interesting. And then, I want to know as I read the story, if I could find where like the characters just, where you left off and your characters took over. I also find that, because I write too, I don't know, but I find that incredibly interesting. And the twist, the ending and the twist that you didn't have at first. And then it just happened to come to you or appear or write itself really, because the characters are telling you how it's going to go. I find that so fascinating. And your book now just opens up my interest so much more by learning that. You know what I mean? Because when readers or people that are watching this get to hear what's involved and how you feel and how it went, it's not just a book, it's the story behind the story. You know what I mean? Your story of writing the story. And you made it sound fascinating. I mean, I really want to read it. And that's the goal of a writer. So you should.
Well, I'm excited. Thank you.
You pat yourself on the back. So we really have to keep up.
It's nice to get that encouragement.
Look, it sounds fascinating. And I can't wait to read it. And I'm sure after watching this, many, many other people are going to want to read it too. So just let us know, because it's almost time to wrap up. Where can we find? I'm going to post the links, but where can we find you? Let us know.
Probably right now I'm spending most of my time on Facebook and Twitter. I do also have Instagram, but that doesn't really seem to be much of a give and take type of thing. That's like here, I'm posting this picture,
Right, you can't click links and stuff like that.
If you want to reach me, I would say reach out to me on Facebook. The problem with Twitter is I have 22,000 followers, and sometimes I have so many messages in my feed that I miss stuff.
Yeah.
So, get lost and it's not intentional. It's just sometimes they either they don't show up or I just miss them or something. So I do try. But
so Facebook is the place, because I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will agree too. Twitter, you can get lost in Twitter with the notifications and the way they show up. So that's definitely, I agree with that. So
I do love Twitter though, especially the writing community on Twitter is just so incredibly supportive. And I just really love it. I just don't have time to be everywhere and still write.
Right. So Suzanne misses anybody on Twitter. Don't take it personal. It's just, right? It's just a hard thing to manage, Twitter.
Yeah. If you comment on one of my posts, then I will definitely see you. But if you tag me, I will probably see you, but I may not. So.
Right. Or where the original tag came from. Sometimes I have a problem with that. Like I see it being retweeted or, people adding to it. And then I'm like, wait a minute, where did this original tweet come from? So that way I can, thank the person or, just acknowledge a person. But yeah, it's a little difficult to maneuver. But Facebook, you would say, is the best place if anyone wants to get in touch with you. And
yeah, I think so.
Your fabulous books and your fabulous stories. Well, I'm so
and I see some beautiful pictures right behind you of your books.
Oh, yes. My purple colors.
Wonderful books.
The Smoke Tree.
If you haven't read Stefanie's books, I recommend them. They're very beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Well, this was a wonderful hour. I'm so glad that we got to talk face to face, because when we did work together, everything was through the phone and through messaging and stuff like that. And now we got to talk face to face, and it was fantastic. And I learned a lot, and it was really interesting. And I think your stories are super interesting. And that's what writing stories is all about, right?
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you are welcome.
This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And this was your first live interview?
Yes, it was.
It was a piece of cake, right? It was a piece of cake. It's like two friends just having a conversation, right?
Yeah,
just about the things that they love and learn a little bit more about each other. And I'm so glad that I was the one to do your first live interview. So, because I think it's very easy, just us chatting and talking and stuff like that. And I'm really interested in your stories. So guys, don't forget, keep your eyes out now for S.G. Minae and her wonderful stories. And I am going to include the links right after the interview. And I want to say thank you so much for joining me. It was a lot of fun, and we'll be keeping our eyes out. Did you want to say anything else before we wrap it up, or no? Did you want to add anything? Please be my guest. Well, you are my guest.
Thank you guys very much for joining us. And I know that I hope that what we talked about was interesting. It just sort of let you get into my head a little bit, as scary a place as that may be sometimes. And I hope that you'll check out my books because I'm very proud of them, and I think that they're going to be a lot of fun.
I think so too. I definitely think so. So check out SG Minae. Keep your eye out for her books. And again, Suzanne, thank you so much for joining me. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to chatting again on social media. And we'll definitely do this again. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks again, Steph.
Oh, you're welcome. All right.
You've got a great show. You've got such a great demeanor as a hostess. You make it very easy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Have a great rest of your day, and I will definitely see you on social media.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.